Ready? Are we rolling? Yeah. All right, Kat, it's great to have you on the show. And obviously, I've seen you every time I walk into the angling company. This very modest, quiet person doing what you do. But yet this year, you've had a huge voice in the world of permit fishing. And just to highlight that, this year you've caught a new world record on 4-pound tests, a permit that is now 9.5 pounds. You caught a 6-pound world record permit, which is a 21-pound fish. The fish before that was 9.5. And you got third in the IGFA permit tournament against all the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, hallelujah, right?
Yeah, it's been a great year. A lot of more fishing than normal because of the whole COVID thing. So I got out on the water a lot, which was really cool. And to be able to see the water like that with basically no one here, it felt pretty cool.
What was that like?
Well, I mean, there were just days where you'd go out and not see another boat for 8 hours. And I mean, I don't think we'll ever see that again. I've certainly never seen it. But I fished with Simon Becker, and he told me that fishing down here during that time was kind of like fishing 25 years ago when he first started.
And then too, he may have seen a boat or two here and there, but this year it was completely void of boats.
Yeah, I mean, there were still people who lived down here who were getting out,
Right.
like us, but just not near the boat traffic that there normally is.
Did you see that your ability to fish improve dramatically because the fishing was that much better?
It's hard for me to know what to attribute that to.
Right.
I did have some great fishing this year, but some of the best days that I had were before it shut down. I wouldn't necessarily say there was a huge change in the number of shots or anything like that, but just to have fish that weren't seeing a lot of boats, I think maybe they were. Yeah, maybe they were a little bit kinder to us.
I agree. We got down here early, maybe mid-May, and we'd come out of a certain channel and look all the way to Key West, 17 miles away, and not see a boat on the beach. And like you just made mention, I don't think we'll ever see that again. Yeah,
that was the silver lining. I mean, that was a really stressful time, but being able to get out there.
Right.
There was definitely a awareness while it was happening that it was an amazing opportunity to see the fishery that way.
Let's talk about your fishing. Did you grow up fishing with a father that introduced you to the sport, to the outdoors in any way?
I grew up in Pennsylvania, and we lived in the Appalachians, and so we were definitely outdoors a lot. But we never really fished. My dad was interested in fishing, but the few times that we went fishing were kind of, sitting there waiting for something to bite, which I just didn't have the attention span for.
Right.
But I would catch frogs and stuff like that. And I loved being outside, but I never fished.
And I see you, the little that I know you're kind of maybe like a tomboy, possibly, when you were growing up. You weren't afraid to get your knees dirty out there playing.
No, definitely
on the playground.
Not. Grass stains all over the place.
What were your passions back then?
I loved to just play outside. When I was a kid, my brother and I had a pond across the street, and we would go and catch frogs and tadpoles and stuff like that.
Would you touch the tadpoles and frogs?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So
but
good for you.
Yeah,
I know a lot of the guys that wouldn't do that. Nikki.
Well, we had a lot of fun doing that, and then I was interested in sports and music and stuff like that.
What kind of sports?
I did field hockey, soccer, and then in high school I ran track and cross country.
Wow, real athlete.
Yeah.
Was it hard to pick up fly fishing, and when was that, and how did you get involved with throwing the wand?
So I moved down here in 2013, having never fished before. And my dad introduced me to Nathaniel because he was a customer of Nathaniel's at the shop. And
in what way? A customer?
He was just...
He's a fisherman?
Yeah, he had moved down here when he retired.
Okay.
So I I came down to visit, and I was at a point in my life where I was feeling I was adrift. I graduated from college. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Were you depressed in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I felt I was feeling kind of lost, and so I came down here for a visit, and my dad encouraged me to move down here.
Well, obviously, was it love at first sight?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I thought he was cute, but
Shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
But obviously, he wanted to see more of you. That's why he was inspiring you to move down here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And so my dad introduced me to Nathaniel. I actually started working at the angling company, and we really hit it off. And he started to give me casting lessons, and we went fishing. The first time I went fishing down here we fished for sharks,
right?
Which I think was really good given my skills at that time, where you can chum them up and do that kind of stuff.
Was it hard to learn how to fly cast?
I
mean, you're an athlete. I would think you might be able to pick it up fairly quickly.
I don't know that I was a great talent to start out. I definitely had a lot of
great instruction.
For sure. And I like to think that I follow directions. I attribute a lot of my early success to the people who were there to help me, people who, like Nathaniel, who taught me how to cast, and then the guides that I was fishing with, who are just amazing, giving me opportunities that made it so
Very
that
few
someone with
have.
my skill set, which was not great, could still have success.
I could see your learning curve being quite steep, being the athlete that you are and the great people that you had supporting you and teaching you.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to start catching fish, and was there a light that went off they kind of led me to this, but I really dig this? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah. So honestly, I think so I fished a little bit for about 2 years, and then I fished in the Del Brown just kind of as a fluke, because one of our customers and friends, Ted, couldn't make it. So we gave him store credit at the shop, and I fished the tournament.
Oh, how cool.
And that was the first tournament I've ever fished. And I caught my first permit on the last day of that tournament.
That's crazy. Who are you fishing with?
With Drew DeLashman.
Okay.
And oh my gosh.
Were you overwhelmed?
Yes, I was freaked out. I couldn't believe it, because everybody had been telling me how hard these fish were. And when we caught that fish, and I was feeling kind of bad about myself, because the second day of the tournament, I caught one bonefish. And, I was starting to feel like, yeah, man, I'm looking pretty bad right now.
You're feeling maybe a little bit over your head and possibly embarrassed that you were actually in a tournament with the guys and you never caught a permit.
Well, I don't know if I thought about it that way, but I just really wanted to do something.
Right.
I'm a competitive person, even though at that time I think I give a lot more credit to my guide than to myself. But
you had to make the cast.
Yeah.
You caught the fish.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. So that was a moment for me where the feeling of that was so exciting and compelling that it really kind of hooked me.
What were some of the early learning pains, if there were any, in learning how to become a fly caster? Because obviously out west, trout fishing is quite easy. Just, a little dry fly fishing, you're only casting 10, 15 feet, 20 feet, maybe, 40 at the most. But obviously fly casting down here in Florida, you're throwing into the wind that's like a wall. It's heavy air. Mm-hmm. What were some of those early pains of growth, if you had any?
Well, it could have been a benefit to me that I didn't have any experience prior to that. So I definitely had frustrating moments. I remember this one time I was fishing with Drew, and there were these 2 mudding permit, huge fish, just mud, and then they'd slowly move a little bit further, mud again. But the wind was like 25 miles an hour, probably right in my face. And I made a cast, and it was short. And he's working so hard, and he gets me a little bit closer, and I make a cast, and it's shorter still. and I just that wind and not waiting on my back cast, because I think that there's this tendency when you start getting freaked out to rush, which is like the worst thing that you can do.
To get short with your cast?
Yeah.
Short and quick?
So I rush my cast, and I don't wait for my back cast I know this now looking back, but I had no idea what was wrong at the time.
Right.
And there were definitely moments like that. That's one that is burned into my memory just because those fish stuck around that Drew was working so hard to get me closer, and I just kept casting short and short and short. I never showed those fish fly.
I know what you're saying, because here you have something that you so desperately want right there.
I know.
And your arms are
crazy.
reached out, and you're a fingertip shy of that.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Kilpatrick, your guide, of this tournament that you just recently fished this fall,
mm-hmm.
finishing third in the IGFA permit tournament. He says that you have improved more than any of his anglers he's ever worked with.
Wow.
He says that you work harder than anybody he's ever had on his boat, any of his clients. Tell me about your work ethics today.
Well, I practice a lot, and I think part of it is that there was a time when I wanted to, I have these goals, like my goals are to win a permit tournament and to catch these records. And I don't know, I just wasn't taking an active enough role in achieving those goals. And there was just this moment when I realized, like, I need to be spending more time practicing. I might not be able to fish, X number of days a year where I'm out there practicing this live, so to speak.
Right.
But I can go to the park and practice. And so I started kind of at the beginning of this year in earnest, just practicing a lot, like maybe 4 or 5 days a week. I go to the park and I cast.
That's a lot.
And even just a month of doing that earlier in the year, I could see a huge difference.
But here's my question. When you go practice in the park, a lot of people will go to the golf range and practice, but without the understanding of the techniques and tactics, they're just refining bad habits.
Oh, yeah.
So when you go to the park and practice, you have a good understanding of what you're trying to refine. Is that key? I mean, is that the?
I think so.
Is that true?
And for me, that comes from having Nathaniel to come in. What I'll do is, I'll practice for a week or two, and then Nat will come with me.
Right.
And he helps me figure out
the difference.
Yeah, what is going wrong here, and having that resource has been so helpful.
Also too, I think if you understand what you're trying to perfect, you can self-correct and you can fix your own stuff. What's your weakest link, and what are you working on when you go to the park?
So what I've been trying to work on really over the course of the year has been accuracy. Because I feel like I'm at a point where even if I can't cast the whole fly line on command, I can cast far enough that I could reasonably expect to hook fish. But what I really was trying to work on this year was like making that zone of where I'm happy with the fly landing smaller and smaller, so that I'm less, if I can make that more accurate, then I'm leaving less up to chance.
Yeah, we use that same concept in elk hunting. Aim small, miss small.
Right.
Because if your target is this big, you use that as your target, and if your arrow hits over here, you still hit your target.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're aiming for a hair and your arrow is this far off, or like you're practicing your casting, at first your target might be realistic. It might be like the top lid of a trash can.
Right.
Then you start getting that smaller and smaller. I mean, I see this photograph of you up on the wall, which is a beautiful photograph of black and white. And I can see that you got the nice big haul and your stroke is all the way out in the back. Do you work on your backhand cast as much? I
do work on it. I wouldn't say that that's the biggest part of what I'm practicing, but I have tried to get better because there's
a lot of shots
a
on
lot
that
of
side
shots
of the
on
boat.
that side.
Right.
Yeah.
And the wind's coming right to left.
Yeah. So it's something that I work on. Definitely going to keep working on it.
Let's talk about tackle for a second. Obviously not having the power to push, certain rods that might be too stiff. What size of rods are you throwing that might be advantageous for you to do what you need to do?
Well, I have, I'll cast a 9-weight for permit mostly if it's not windy, but I'll use a 10-weight if it's really windy.
Right.
I just like the way I can feel a 9 more, there's just this, I just love that weight more because of the feel than anything.
Right. It bends a little easier.
Yeah. And I feel like with those rods, the lighter rods just give you a lot more feedback that you can feel while you're casting. It's
interesting. I'm always have associated the similarity between shooting a bow and arrow and a fly rod. A lot of people don't understand about that short shot. Most rods can throw a long way, but when you have a fish at say 20, 30 feet, if you got a rod that's too stiff, you can't build line speed that a rod that won't bend.
Right.
And I was just wondering, since you're a woman, maybe you're going to be throwing lighter tipped rods more so than maybe guys.
I'm not sure about that. I don't feel casting an 11-weight all day. Doesn't make me feel like tired or
so you're fine
anything
with
like that. I feel pretty good about it. But my preferences were more just can I feel this rod? Because there's a lot of information that you get while you're casting from the way that things feel.
Right.
I don't know if you feel that way.
Oh, for sure. It's like you want to have feedback in your hand. Mm-hmm. And my casting has changed over the years for sure. And it's all based on having that. For me, most rods cast well, but I want to find a rod that fishes well.
Yeah.
In certain situations, you might want to have a different rod for that situation. Obviously, more wind or bigger fish, etc. Mm-hmm. Why permit and not your classic tarpon that most people love down here in the Florida Keys, or maybe bonefish? Is it because of the influence because of Nate?
Well, I'm sure that has something to do with it, just because he's taught me most of what I know, and my introduction to the sport was kind of through him. But the thing that I like the most about permit fishing is just that it's so challenging. I love a challenge. And
so you're okay with not catching a fish?
Absolutely. I love the, hunting around for this.
Right.
I mean, how many times in permit fishing do you get, maybe 5 shots, and on your 5th shot, you're like, that might be it, you know?
No,
and you have to, there's a mental component. It's just, maybe it's a little masochistic streak or something like that. I don't know. But I don't mind the frustration because when it does come together, it feels so good. And then as your skills increase and you start figuring things out about them, and then you start catching more, it just feels so rewarding. And, I've always, I don't know, the hard stuff is always what
you gravitated
is
to
more
that.
compelling to me.
Right. They tell me too, Doug, is that you go out and practice wade casting, even though you're not fishing, but you're in the water wading and practicing your casting wading.
Yeah, because I've had some very embarrassing moments in the water where, my fly is hitting the water and, things are starting to get crazy. So that's why I started to do that. And
I mean, that says so much about your desire and your passion to catch fish and do it well, is that you're practicing not only casting in a park, but you're actually out there wading in the ocean practicing your casting.
Yeah.
I would think that's got to be kind of hard because you're not that tall. You don't have real long arms to keep the line above the water. Is that the biggest challenge for you?
I feel like I have a lot of work to do on that area. I do have much better luck when the water is shallow. Sometimes you're permit fishing and you're in 1.5 foot of water and you're not as close to the surface of the water with your cast. But, trying to get it up higher and, being able to move the plane, because I kind of cast, have a sidearm cast.
Quarter. Yeah.
But, trying to bring that up a little bit more. Just working on things, trying to test things out. I wouldn't say that I've necessarily gotten to where I want to be yet, but that's part of the process, which is what I love about the sport.
The tournaments. So you got into your first tournament and then you caught one.
Yeah.
And Doug says that not only do you practice more than anyone, but because of your passion and because of how good you are and through your practice, that you will win one day. So you're talking about winning these tournaments. When did you think that, yes, I can compete with these guys and I know I can win?
So I would say this year, when I started really putting in that time, is when it started to feel more realistic. There was a certain amount of optimism before, where I was like, wow, I think I could do it.
Little glimmers of hope.
Yeah. And obviously, just because I'm competitive, anytime I enter into a competition, I'm like, I'm going to do it,
Right.
But this year I started seeing the changes and how much better I was getting.
The results are coming.
Right. I feel like there used to be a time when I would go out and, the last spot of the day and having not caught one, I would just be, so disappointed. Like, I don't know when the next time I'm going to do this is, or God forbid something were to go wrong. Say I hooked a fish and I lost it. I'm like, wow, I have no idea when the next time I'll hook one of these things is. And this year, one of the biggest changes for me has been, I feel like I'm getting to a point where if something goes wrong, like, it's cool.
You're fine.
I know I'm going to do it again soon. I have that confidence building where it just mentally is starting to feel, I wouldn't, not necessarily easier, because the competitions are, kind of a battle in my own mind as well. But right. I feel like I have a more realistic chance now.
Right.
And I still think that I have a long way to go.
Of course, we all do. But now you see, obviously, you just got third in a tournament. The writing is on the wall. Mm-hmm. Have the previous women that have won men's tournaments, Linda Robinson won the Golden Fly, a weightfish tournament. Diane Rudolph won the Holly. The only two other women that have won men's tournaments. Have they inspired you in any way, or do you even know about what they have done?
Well, actually, I didn't know about that Linda.
Right.
But I've heard about Diana, and I will say that early on, when I would listen to people talk about Diana Rudolph, what they said was that she's the real deal.
For sure.
She's a good angler. She rigs her own stuff. She's really passionate. And when I heard people talk about her, I was like, that's how I want people to think about me.
Right.
And so she definitely inspired me. There's no question about it.
But what's interesting about Diana is she was working at the Florida Keys Outfitters, and she was in the tackle and fishing. Her father had a big presence in the Keys, and so she was really embedded into catching big fish and chasing a few records. I think she's got a permit record. She had a tarpon record at 135 that was just recently broken. And then all of a sudden, she's kind of left the game. She married Gary Seam, the designer for Sage, and lives out west, had a child. And so all of a sudden, she's kind of, I thought we were going to see more of her in the tournament game, the men's tournaments, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And now she's gone. What about like Joan Wolfe, Lee Wolfe's wife, women in fishing? Do you know much about the history of women in fishing by chance?
I definitely know of Joan, and I've heard about how great she was, and great caster, and really passionate. And I know that there have been a lot of women who kind of
been in the game,
the trail ahead of me, for sure. Even my mother-in-law, who really taught Nathaniel to fish. So we have a lot of Untitled in the family too.
For sure.
So I've been kind of surrounded by avid female
successful
anglers.
women fisher. Yeah,
exactly.
Fishers.
So that's been cool.
Do you have any aspirations in chasing records per se? Like you have like Meredith McCord has got 9,242 records and counting, right? I mean, does that appeal to you in any way?
I am interested in certain records. I don't know that's necessarily that I really want to go for a lot of records, but I am gonna pursue the permit records. I kind of feel like I've focused on one thing to the exclusion of everything else.
Right.
Like, for example, I don't feel like I'm a very good tarpon angler at all.
And why is that?
I just never really do it.
Do they appeal to you that much?
No, I think
are they too hard, too big, too heavy?
I think they're cool, and I like to. I'll fight one occasionally, but it's not that I'm not interested in them. It's just that I'm so interested in permit. That's what I want to work on. That's what I want to spend my energy on.
And that's why you are where you're at in the game. I mean, it takes a lot of focus and a lot of time to do something well. And if you're a saltwater fly fisherman and you're going to get diversified with other species, somebody's going to be, you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere. And you're not going to be nearly, that growing curve is going to be stunted, if you will.
Yeah. And I there's this phrase that I certainly didn't come up with, but that resonates with me, is that I feel like I can do anything, but I can't do everything.
But you're going to do that one thing well.
Right. I pick the things that are the most important to me, and that's what I spend all my energy doing.
What's your next record you are focused on?
So I'm considering the 2-pound permit record, which is vacant for women, which I think would be really cool. But I also know that I've thrown 2 twice, just kind of messing around just to see if I could catch something on it.
Right.
And Brandon and I went out and did just hooked 2 bonefish, and both of them
broke. So
one of them ran out, got on the fly line, and then took maybe 10 feet off of the reel. And then, you know how bonefish do that little surge?
Yeah, they're right.
And
gone.
And then the second one was right on the hook set that I broke it off. So I know it's going to be like an order of magnitude harder than the 4, but it would be really cool. For
sure. What kind of coaching does Nate give you for this light tippet record quest?
He's given me a lot of great rigging suggestions, taught me how to tie the knots.
So you tie all your own bimini?
I tie my leaders.
Cobras?
I don't tie cobras. I tie a Huffnagel for the shock.
Huffnagel, not the cobra.
No, but I feel like when the tippet is so small,
right?
It's still not a huge. Huffnagel's not a huge knot in 4-pound.
Right.
So
is that a slap in the face to your husband?
No, I don't think so.
Yes, he says.
But he taught me how to tie those knots, and I can't tell you how many times I can't understand why this darn knot is not working.
Right.
And he's like, well, it's because, and so he's provided invaluable advice on rigging and stuff like that.
Do you practice pulling on scales by chance?
I have done that. Nathaniel and I usually when I start looking at a line class record. So when we started doing the 6, we rigged 6-pound up, we pulled on it, and tried to break it basically. Right. Just to get an idea
where the breaking point was.
Exactly. And the way that I've done it, I'm not sure what I'm going to use for the 2-pound, because the reel needs to have like super light drag for it.
For sure.
But for the 4 and the 6, we were using a Mako, and I was calibrating those. So I would rely on the drag totally. Normally when I fight a permit, I do kind of use my hand on the reel.
For sure.
With 16, because...
Or pinch the fly line. Do you pinch the fly line at all to inspire drag?
I do. Well,
or just
I palm the reel.
Palm the reel.
And so what I decided to do is not touch the reel at all, just trust my drag. So we, set calibrated the drag, so I knew exactly what a 1/2 pound was and a pound was, and then just trust the equipment.
Now, do you mark the drag on the reel
Yes.
with weight so you know exactly where that mark is?
We use a boga grip, make a dot. I had marks for a half a pound, and 3 pounds, and I never used 3.
Right. Interesting stuff. What fishing in general, in this genre, you have so many great fishermen and guides in the history of permit fishing with Del Brown and Steve Huff that basically innovated the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody out there that you're really intrigued with and what they've done?
Tons of people. I'm a big, fangirl with this stuff.
You are.
Yeah. And, to hear all those stories about Del and Steve and then meet Steve.
Right.
I mean, we just went on vacation together. Crazy.
So if you're collecting baseball cards, but they're fishermen and guides, what kind of cards would you have in your packet?
Well, you got to have a Steve Huff card. And Simon Becker and Doug Kilpatrick, I've learned so much from those guys in different ways.
Right.
And Simon is like almost a fly fishing philosopher. We've talked about so many things, and he's helped me kind of come to my own understandings of
I would
how I
say,
feel about
I've
things.
never fished with Simon Becker, but I would think that he's possibly similar to like John O'Hearn, where metaphysically, spirituality is hugely a part of their process and their being on the water.
Yeah, I think they are pretty. I know both of them, and I think of them very differently. But the thing about Simon is that and one of the things that he kind of imparted to me was just this desire to always learn more. And he's still out there trying to learn new things. I mean, he's been down here for probably 30 years. He's an excellent guide, but he's always looking for something special. And I've seen beautiful things with him. What
kind of conversation on the water do you have with him when you're fishing?
I mean, we talk about a lot of things. He's into music, so we talk a little bit about music, and but we talk about the fish a lot. He's helped me kind of solve problems. He has a great way, and I would say Doug does too, where after something goes wrong,
right, which is so important,
we have a discussion about it.
Right.
They never make me feel bad, but we talk about what could have been better, and that's so huge for growing as an angler, to just be reflect on that stuff
for
afterwards.
Sure. And so who else is in your baseball flats fishing card collection?
So some of the anglers that I fished against in these tournaments have really inspired me too, because they've just shown me
what can be done.
Yeah, I mean, Nathaniel, Joe Scrumbellos, I and many others. I mean, Mike Ward, Mike Dawes, all those people, and I'm especially as I was kind of getting where I really didn't understand a lot of this stuff, just to see what they were able to do. The March Merkin is good for that, because sometimes you have just horrible weather.
Right.
And some of these, you might get one shot the whole time,
right.
And some of these people are catching that one fish.
Right.
Spend 8 hours of the day looking into glared out 25-mile-an-hour wind, just horrible conditions. And to get one shot in that whole time and have the focus and the presence in that moment, and then the skills to get it done, it's just those tournaments, I don't feel like they say much about the people who didn't catch fish, but they say a lot about the people who did.
I'm going to point right over there to your husband, Nate.
He's one of them.
I mean, here's a case in point. It's blowing terribly, really, really cold. And all of a sudden, John O'Hearn says, we got to make a move. And they race out to the Marquesas, and he's thinking, where can I find some warm water where I might be able to find a fish? They find that fish, and your husband catches that fish and wins the tournament.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate challenge. And that's where that team plays so hugely, bringing their assets to the table each, the guide and the angler, and that mixture pays dividends.
Absolutely. And that's such a great dynamic about this sport, is that team
effort. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If you had one question to ask the late Del Brown, who was the man who caught 500 permit before permit were catchable, he's been long gone. What would that question be possibly?
I would just like to hear him talk about the process of pioneering these techniques and flies and that kind of stuff. And I've heard about Del. I think Steve kind of described him as
very well
a tinkerer, like where he would try different things. And I'd be interested to hear his take on that whole process of figuring these fish out when really nobody had any idea how to catch them, or that they were even catchable.
It's interesting in the fact that two people can stand in one location next to a tree and watch an apple drop out of that tree, and the next day, there are two different stories.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be interesting to see his.
So how do we believe in the Bible after all these years? But yes, listening to Steve Huff talk about the years of the innovation of the merkin, when no one was out there fishing for permit, and what they did with that fishery, and now everybody's out there refining it at such a large, level of success.
Yeah.
But anyway, kudos to you. I've always loved your presence in the shop and your big smile, and your success is very profound, not only among women, but hugely among men too. And you've got this fishing world that's looking at you going, Kat's doing it.
Well, I don't know.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very inspiring to a lot of people.
Thank you very much.
When I saw his West Side Story.